So with that said, Erica Cohen has a story of how long, where she went, how long, I say it again, how long it took her to get to America. When you watch the movie Coming to America, you will watch it differently. Erica Cohen's story of coming to America is unbelievable. She's going to tell you, I've got pictures when she's ready for me to show them. She'll let me know, and I will show you her pictures. So without further ado, Erica, the floor is yours with your flowers.
Thank you very much, Carol, and thank you all for joining this program. And I appreciate your love and friendship, and I'm very honored to live in this country. So I was born in 1949 in Carpathian Mountains. It's a beautiful area surrounded with mountains that gorgeous, and they grow grapes, and it's just a happy looking place and many good memories that I have from that country. We lived on a river of Tisza, and our town called Tisza-Ujlak. That was in Hungarian. When the Russians took over the area in 1946, they closed the border, took part of Hungary, part of Romania, part of Czechoslovakia, and my parents became Russian citizens. They were not allowed to leave anymore the country. And when I was born in 1949, it was after the state of Israel was established. My parents found out that they had a brother and sister who survived the war and lived in Israel. And so my parents' dream was to leave. Carol, if you would like to show some of the picture. I never met my grandparents, and they did not survive the war. So I wanted to share with you. On the left facing is my aunt Gisela Lebovitz, who lived in Bridgeport. She was a kosher caterer, and she came to this country in 1939 with her 2 children. On that same picture is my father's mother, my grandmother Rachel, and my aunt Roisa, Rozhika, Shoshana in Hebrew, and she survived at age 15, living with false papers in Budapest, Hungary, and then she moved to Israel in 1945 when the war ended. And then in the next picture is my great-grandfather, who was my father's father. His name was Rev Moshe Blasberger, and he lived in Bielke. And I learned about him after a book was published about the town. And he was 80 years old, and he was taken to Auschwitz with all that family, and they did not survive. Thank you. This is my mother's family. This picture was taken in 1930. And on the right side is my mother, her brother, her sister, and Mr. Samuel Semovitz, who came to this country in early, like 1900, and another sister of my mother. And in the middle is Bobby, that is Mr. Semovitz's mother. On the left side is, if anybody knows Bernie Jacobs, and his family is his grandmother and grandfather, who were brothers with my grandfather. And behind him is Mary Jacob, Dave Klein, and Zoli Klein. And they came to this country in 1930s, like 34 or 36, and settled in Bridgeport. And that's the reason we also here now, because family was living in Bridgeport. Thank you, Carol. This is my mother's wedding picture. They met, my parents met in 1946. My father survived the war. He was very brave, and he was able to escape even from the Russian army. He served in a forced labor camp from 1940 in the Hungarian army. He was taken all over Eastern Europe to work. And my mother survived Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen, and they met in 1946. They got married in 47, and they settled in a town of Tisauila. Thank you. These pictures were taken when we were applying to leave Russia. So I was 6 months old in 1950 when my parents first applied. They were very brave, and they didn't lose faith, and they had a hope that they would be reunited with their family. This was first time, but the Russians refused us. Within 6 months or 8 months, we received an answer from, for our application that you're not allowed to leave. And we started our life. My father was a furniture manufacturer, and he was traveling past Teicher to Rachow to buy like lumber, wood, to manufacture furniture. Then they would take that through the river, down in the river, the wood, to Pust, another beautiful city, had a very large Jewish community, and they would clean up the wood to make it into lumber, or so he could manufacture furniture. My father made a good name for himself, and people came and ordered from him furniture. The business was run in our home. We had a big backyard where we had fruit trees growing, and my mother had a wonderful vegetable garden. So we had fresh in-season fruits and vegetable. And my father has 4 employees, but it was government owned. My father took a risk by manufacturing 2 sets of bedroom sets, for example, in 1 month. And one was legally put through to the documents with the office. So the boss and all the people were aware of it. The other set, my father sold on a black market, which to a person who ordered the set. He was very concerned for his safety and us, because he was risking his life. But that's the only way you were able to support your family. You had to have extra income to afford to buy food, clothing, and live in that area. So many people had jobs like that, they risked their lives, and some were caught and were imprisoned. But that's how life was in Russia. There was no freedom of religion, or freedom of expressing yourself, or you couldn't gather. I remember after this picture, my brother was born in 1952. He's online. His name is Nick Lax. And my parents had to hide to have a bris. You could not freely observe the Jewish tradition. But once they had the bris early in the morning, like 5 in the morning in the house, then afternoon there was a celebration, and the whole community was invited, and all my friends' parents came and helped, and they cooked and baked, and it was a wonderful celebration. My brother's bris, that's my first memory. I was holding on to my dad. I was 3 years old. And at that time, my mother was still in bed resting for, 7 days. Women stayed after delivering a child. But that was a happy occasion, and we made friends that lasted all through our lives. Thank you, Carol. This is a picture of me. I'm the little one, looks like a little boy, and that's my cousin, Morika. My mother had only one sister who survived the war, and they lived in a beautiful city called Bereksaz, which was a very large Jewish community. And we used to visit them. So when I was growing up, we had trains, we had buses, and that's how we would travel to visit our family and friends. And it was a beautiful city. Again, it has the most gorgeous synagogue that the Russians converted into a theater. The Russians were atheists, against religion, and they did not allow Jews to have a synagogue. There were churches open in our town, and there were churches in other towns, but they tried to prevent young people to believe in God and to believe in religion and tradition. In our town, the synagogue was converted into a public bathhouse. Growing up, we did not have hot water or any water coming into the house, so people used to go to public bathhouses. Thank you, Carol. This is me, my mom's favorite, and many moms to have white bow ties in our hair. If you would see all the pictures I have growing up, I've always had bow ties, and I always had white collar that my mother loved to hand embroider and crochet, and she loved to make these gorgeous doilies. I don't know if you can see it, but my mother never rested. She was busy cooking and embroidering, knitting, all types of things. Even the tablecloth that I have here is my mom made it for me for the Shabbos with the help of Goldie. We were copying down a print, and my mother made this tablecloth for me that I have here on now, which is very special to me. Thank you, Carol. So this is a picture again, where we second time applied in 1955, and we wanted to join my brothers and sister and another brother, my father's brother and sister in Israel. So this was second time we applied, and the Russians again refused us. We had no camera, we didn't have photographer, so we had to have specially someone come to take these pictures. You had to have a family picture to apply for a visa. It took almost like a year to put papers together. You have to have from work characteristic, you have to have from school, all kinds of information. At this point, I was already like 8 years old, and the principal called me up to go into his office, and he wanted to explain that I'm going to be the enemy of the country by applying to leave. And it's a lot of problem. You can't get into college and things like that. He was trying to discourage me, to discourage my parents to leave. To celebrate the holidays, it was very difficult, but my parents believed in it, and friends would get together and bake matzah. My father built outside a brick oven, and we would have 6 to 10 families come in his workshop, covered with paper, all his workshop, and they would bake matzah so we could celebrate Passover. And my parents would share this with neighbors who could not afford to have matzah or food for Passover. To have food, my mother was a very good negotiator or barterer. So when somebody came to order a set of furniture from a small village, my mother would ask them to save eggs, like starting March, to make sure that we have eggs for Passover, so she could bake and she could make, other cookings that needed for the celebration. And she would also ask them to force-fed like goose. That's the only way she would have kosher meat and fat and prepare for the holiday. There was no supermarket. There was no grocery stores where we were living. My father, with my girlfriends, Evie, my best friends that we grew up together from the time we were born, we've been friends. They would go, our parents, on Wednesday morning, 5 o'clock in the summer, Friday morning, and Sunday morning to a bazaar where farmers would bring to sell their merchandise. It was fresh chicken, it was fruits and vegetables and things like that. We had milk and cheese delivered weekly to our house. And my mother grew in the summer fresh vegetables. For the winter, they would have to have everything in a cold cellar. Now, we didn't have Florida, we don't have California. You have to plan your food. And so they made friends with these farmers, and they would have these huge bags of cabbage delivered. And my parents would pickle the cabbage in a big wooden barrel. And it was a big job all winter to take care of it, to make sure that they have cabbage for stuffed cabbage and sauerkraut for my brother's favorite soup, a bean soup with sauerkraut. And that was life. My parents did the best they could for us. They were wonderful parents, loving, and we were considered like middle class. There were so many other people who had hardly had bread for their table. My mother also baked bread in the 1960s. Then Khrushchev was here in America, and then he promised Cuba and gave away the wheat from the Russian people on the black market. Again, my father had to buy wheat, and they would bake home-baked bread. We were very lucky. Thank you, Carol. This is the repeated picture, Carol. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So I don't know if you recognize this, but this is Senator Lowell Weicker. And after applying 3 times for our plans to leave Russia and join the cousins in Israel, we were refused 3 times. After the 67 war, I remember like today, the day we were looking for a job for me. I graduated school, and our parents decided to apply to United States. And when we applied, it was 1968. It took us a year to get all the papers together. My father had my aunt Giselle Lebovitz living here, and my uncle Henry Lax. And we asked for visa, and they sent us a sponsorship, a visa to invite us. It took us 2 years to get an answer from Russia. While we were waiting, my father spent every night listening to the Free Voice of Europe and tried to understand what's going on in the world, because the Russians isolated us. We didn't know what was happening in Israel. And I just want to go back, one more interesting information to share, that in 1950s, it was Golda Meir who was the first ambassador to the Soviet Union from Israel. Golda Meir was born in Ukraine, also in Russia now, and she came to this country in the late 1800s, and she was the ambassador. She attended a service in the only synagogue that was open in Moscow, and after she was finished the service, she went outside and she couldn't believe it. There were hundreds of people waiting for her to greet her, and they approached her and asked her to help for them to leave Russia. They told them they are dissidents. Some of them were imprisoned because they were openly telling the Russian government that they want to leave. Golda promised to help them, Golda Meir, and she did. She got in touch and befriended Henry Kissinger and President Richard Nixon And in 1975, they signed an accord, the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, where they allowed Russia to become favorite country to do business with other countries. In turn, they sold Russia wheat from United States, and the Russians would agree to let the Jews leave. And that's what happened in the 1950s. We were every night on the radio listening to what's happening and how we can hope to get out. And the miracle did happen. And in 1970, we received a letter that we allowed to leave and come to United States. My father did a lot of traveling. He went all the way to Uzhgorod, which is Ungvar, a capital of Carpathia, and all the way to Moscow to try to make connection to help us to get out of the country. My father was very concerned because my brother was approaching in 18 years old, and he did not want him to serve in the Russian army. If one serves in the Russian army in a secret area for 10 years, you cannot leave the country. So in 1968, when we applied, there was a revolution in Prague, the Spring Revolution, 1968, Prague, April of 1968. The tanks were going through our town. I was in Munkacs, where I was studying in business school. My brother happened to be in Munkacs taking a course also for business. I studied in the building that Nima Hirsch's father-in-law, the late Mike Hirsch, was studying as a yeshiva before Second World War. So Munkacs was like 40 minutes from us by bus or car. Gorgeous city, large Jewish population, very cultural, theaters, movies. It was just wonderful. And I can imagine that it must have been wonderful life before the war there. So I graduated, came back, and then we had a flood. It was so much rain. We lived near this river that all the overflooded our town. My parents were moved up to the attic of the house, but we survived even that. So after we received the notice that we're going to leave, my mother started planning what she's going to bring. And with the support of my wonderful friends, parents, and good neighbors, they started to make these quilts. She wanted to have everything that we could bring and start a new life in the United States. So they had to have from Hungary special material for the feather. They had to have from Czechoslovakia the shiny, nice quilt cover. And our friends helped, and my mother organized all that through the winter and spring. And then we had to sell our home and purchase whatever we could bring, and everything had to be on a black market. You cannot imagine, there were no clothes in the store, there were no jewelry. Everything had to be under the table or from a warehouse where my father befriended some people. And we were ready to leave. And my girlfriend, Edie, who's on the Zoom, she lives in Los Angeles. She traveled, and my father's friend traveled with us. We had wood crates that my father made and packed all our belongings. And then we were allowed just so many pieces of luggage to bring with us. And we were allowed to bring $100 per person to come to this country. We arrived to Moscow, which is very far away, 24 hours from the express train from our Carpathia, where we live. And when we went to the American Embassy, we were told that I turned 21 and I cannot be on the same visa with my parents as a family. I need a separate visa. So that's when my Uncle Henry, who worked with Bernie Jacobs' father, owned, and Gary Traeger, they owned the Custom Hall, if any of you remember, on Kings Highway in Fairfield. And they had Gary Traeger, who was involved in local politics. And she got in touch with Lowell Weicker, with Judge Sidney Dworkin, with Governor Maskell, and they were able, within a week, send me a student visa. So we were almost like 2.5 weeks sitting in a hotel in Moscow, never seen the sun. It was rainy, it was cold, it was October 1st, 1970. And then when we were, the diplomats were very helpful. And when we were ready to leave, we sent a telegram to our aunt, Mrs. Lebovitz. She was a caterer, and it was the holiday of Sukkot. Caterers didn't work on a holiday, they usually go on vacation. So we sent a telegram through the American Embassy that we're going to be arriving on the 17th of October, which is now 50 years ago, exactly, this week. And then they gave us, we purchased the tickets, we said goodbye to our wonderful friends, and went to Moscow to the airport, and we had a wonderful flight. We befriended a Russian older gentleman who was coming to visit here. And when we arrived to the JFK, our relatives weren't there. Nobody was waiting for us. We were so surprised. And luckily, we had the stationery that my aunt had, the catering business, and we had her phone number on it. And the relatives of this Russian man called Bridgeport, and they got the answering service. And the answering service said that the Lebovitch is on vacation, they're not at home, and they can call the rabbi at Havasarkon. And they got in touch with Rabbi Joshua Epstein, and it was midnight, Saturday night, at the JFK airport. My parents and us, we were so surprised. There were thousands of people in the airport. And it was so anyway, they called, and Rabbi Epstein knew all about us. They were expecting us because my mother had 6 cousins belonging in Havasarkon, and my uncle and my aunt, they were Havasarkon members. And he called my Uncle Henry, and with his son Kevin, they were able to get a van, and they came by 3 o'clock in the morning and picked us up at the airport. And we were reunited with my father's brother, who they didn't see each other like almost 35 years. As we were coming through from Kennedy Airport to Connecticut, there was some kind of a police, and we didn't know what it was. And all of us, my parents and my brother and I, we hid down between the seats, thinking it's police. That's how we were living in Russia. You were afraid of everything. There was no police, and my cousin Kevin doesn't let me forget this. It was tolls. It was a toll booth. You had to pay tolls on 95. When we arrived, it was very late in the night, but very early in the morning. We went to sleep, and then in the morning we met some of our other relatives and cousins, and we were so welcomed. The day was just like today, a beautiful sunny day, October 17th, and we had the leaves were all done. The season is changing now. We still have the leaves now on the tree, and we were so happy, and it was so warm. It was like 70, 75 degrees, and we felt so welcomed. All the relatives came to greet us, and we went to visit Bernie Jacobs' house. Her parents and some other cousins came, and we were just thrilled. And so I want to acknowledge again Judge Sidney Dworkin, who became then a relative. As you know, Zelda is Arnold's cousin. And a year later, I met Arnold, and we got married, and Zelda and Judge Sidney Dworkin became a family. And we raised our children together and celebrated holidays together. And I thank, again, Lo Viker, who was very helpful. So I didn't have to stay back in Russia. And it was a miracle that I was able to come here. And we love this country. We are so thrilled. And people were so welcoming. My family rented for us a house on Lenox Avenue in Bridgeport on West Side. And there was still synagogue there, the Butler Avenue, and my father started to attend services, and my mother, and they met the Tischlers and Samovitzes and so many other wonderful friends, and they spoke Hungarian, so they felt very much at home. And then when I got married, we moved to Buckley Drive, and Arnold and I, we bought a house, and we had many more immigrants living on Buckley Drive. And those were the happiest years of my parents' life. They would take care of my children, the little ones, push the stroller, and they were able to communicate with the friends. And many of them were also survivors. And they made new friends. And then they moved to Wood Avenue, and they met Rabbi Stein through Mr. Schechter. And my father started attending Minyan twice a day, and my parents would walk on Shabbos, arms in arms and together, and they loved the synagogue and participation. I just want to share with you that the first month when we arrived here, we attended Bernie Jacobs' brother's wedding, Joey Jacobs in Pennsylvania. When we went with my brother to this wedding, I was crying half of the time. To me, it was like a dream. It was also like a fantasy. It was like a Cinderella story. I never seen anything like that in my life. The wedding was beautiful. We attended 2 bar mitzvahs also here in the community with cousins. And we were thrilled. We were just, this country gave my parents a new life. They restored faith. They loved to have kosher home, and they tried very hard to do that in Europe. And here, when the first time went into state kosher market, my parents were so surprised that my mother didn't have to make homemade noodles, pasta, and they didn't have to, everything was available, and all the meat that they could, the selection of meats and chicken and everything, it was wonderful. In Europe, just a little bit, I want to reflect, I forgot to mention it. We had to have Shoichet come on Thursday, and he would slaughter the chickens or goose. And my parents worked very hard, just like my friends' parents, to have the good food and kosher home to try the best. Anyway, again, back to this country, we got married, we had the children. David was born in 1972. Diane, our daughter, was born in 1975. I don't know, Carol, if you have the picture. I don't know how we're doing with the time. My goodness. Okay, so.
Okay, I'm gonna try to get the picture back for you.
I'm sorry, thank you.
No, it's no problem.
Okay.
Just go down to it. Give me a minute. You want me to go here, or you want
No, just further up after Lo Viker. I'm sorry. Thank you. Oh, you are there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's good. So this is the way we looked, the greenhorns, when we arrived from Russia. Lo Viker invited us to his office, and he wished us good luck. And I do have a picture of Gary Traeger also. Anyway, the picture didn't come out good for Carol, but okay, so the next one, Carol. This is my uncle, Henry, and what I wanted to share about him, that when he escorted my aunt, Gisela Lebowitz, to Germany in 1938 to leave, she came back to join her husband with her 2 children. he went back to Europe, and he was telling my grandmother and the family to pack up in 1938. He says, leave. Things are going to be very bad. But nobody believed him. They thought that they live safe. They're going to be protected by the government, but that's not the way it was. And so he left for England, and he joined the Allied forces, and he was fighting the Nazis. In England, he went to synagogues, and he met his wife, Ethel, and they got married there. And then he wrote a letter to my aunt, Giselle, and in 1944, he came to this country, to Bridgeport, and then he sent visa for his daughter. And in a picture on the right is President Churchill, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, that my uncle saw, had a chance to meet him in England. But I am so proud of him. He's my hero, just like our father. Thank you, Carol. This is the second wedding we attended. And this is my aunt and uncle, Henry, and my parents. And this was Bernie Jacobs' wedding on Father's Day of June 71. And they're going to be married 50 years, Janice and Bernie, my cousins. I'm happy to know them and have them. Thank you, Carol. And this was when we met Arnold and started dating. Arnold's parents belonged to Wicker Column, and his father was president of the synagogue, and my mother-in-law, Belle Cohen, was program chairman. And we enjoyed the picnics. I don't know if any of you remember, behind the Jewish Community Center, Wicker Column would have this wonderful picnic, and our family met, and they would speak Yiddish together. My father-in-law, as you know, we did not speak English when we came to this country. So at our holiday tables, we spoke 2-3 languages most of the time. Thank you, Carol. My brother and I became citizens after 5 years living in this country. We both had 2 jobs, and at night going to school to learn English. And then my brother went to engineering school. I am so proud of him. My parents were proud of him. He became an engineer, and he's working almost over 45 years at PerkinElmer's company. And my parents had hard time becoming citizens, but it was very important to them because they wanted to vote, and they loved this country that welcomed them with open arms. So my parents, 20 years later, in 1990, they became citizens. And it was a big article in a newspaper about it, that we were going to celebrate them, their freedom, and they're able to vote now and become American citizens meant a lot to them, and we're grateful. Thank you. This is the picture of 4th generation of our daughter Diane, my mother sitting in the middle, and me and our granddaughter Maya. And I'm so glad that my mother lived to see. She had 2 wonderful grandchildren, and she's got to see 2 great grandchildren. Thank you. And we celebrated my mother's 80th birthday here. My father passed away already. My father had Alzheimer's, which was very difficult. And through the good things in life, we treasure the good memories, but we also had, my mother-in-law passed away when Diane was 8 years old, and then my father-in-law. And so we had good things like everybody happening, and sometimes sad things. So this was a celebration of her birthday. Thank you. And then I'm glad my both parents were there to celebrate David's bar mitzvah. It meant a lot to them, because when my brother was bar mitzvah, they had to celebrate at 5 o'clock in the morning. One by one, the men sneaked into our parents' home, and they were able to have a minyan and celebrate my brother's bar mitzvah. So in this picture is my brother, my sister-in-law, my mother, father, David, and Arnold, and myself and Diane. David was born on Hanukkah, and so we had a Hanukkah bar mitzvah, and it was wonderful to be a family. Thank you. And this is Diane's bat mitzvah. Again, we together as family, and it was a wonderful celebration, and we had all of our family joining us at the celebration, and my parents. It was good memories. Thank you. And this is a picture of my mother and I. We were lighting the Passover for the article in the Connecticut Post. We were lighting the candles, and it was a special to remember and reflect. And it was also dedicated to the Soviet Jews. And on that, I was very involved in a Let My People Go. And most of you who know Rabbi Stein, you know Rabbi Stein. He also, with Avi Weiss, protested in New York, and all the rabbis, and they helped the Russian Jews to leave. I don't know if you can see this picture, but my father built a sukkah. My parents were so happy to celebrate all the Jewish holidays here. So in 1976 or 77, when the children were born, my father built a sukkah, and then I had this poster, "Freedom, the sweets of fruit. Let freedom grow for the Soviet Jews." And this was my part of my decoration in the sukkah. And in this article, we wrote that we decided to, we organized sending matzah to the ambassador, Yuri Dobrinin, at the Soviet embassy in Washington, to symbolic sign of protest over the oppression of Soviet Jews. The matzah is similar to the unleavened bread. So you know what the matzah is, but basically we also ask everybody at home to have another extra matzah and to remember the Soviet Jews. And we try to help them and protest at the embassy so they would let go. And as you know, in 1980s and 90s, over 1 million Soviet Jews moved to Israel. And so many of them came to even this community and this country, and they came as refugees. We did not come as refugees. We were sponsored by our relatives. Thank you, Carol. And this is my family now. I have one more granddaughter, and I'll be very happy. Diane has 2 children, Maya and Noah, and David and Kendra, our son and daughter-in-law, have Nathaniel, who some of you from Rodov Shalom remember. I used to bring him on Shabbos. He used to be such a quiet boy. He's 10 years old now. And he has a little sister, Alexandra, 7 years old. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, they are the pride and joy of my life, and they're getting bigger, and they a lot of fun, and we miss them this year. We see them once in a while. We're very happy, and I am so grateful to live in this country. It was a lot of effort to get out from Russia, but I thank all those who helped us, and I treasure my friendship and my cousins and my friends. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, I would answer.
So on behalf of Rodov Shalom, I would like to say that it is a distinct honor, Erica, to help you celebrate your 50th anniversary of being in the United States. That's why we chose today for the virtual coffee, because it's right before, and there's nothing that is more important, as I've heard you say. So I've heard your story. I listened as you put it together. It still brings tears to my eyes. And I so wanted everybody to hear it. And this has been by far the largest turnout for the virtual coffee that we have had. And it's because of you. And we salute you, Erica.
Thank you.
So,
Can I just show this picture of Gary Traeger? I don't know if her daughter is on.
you can do anything you want. You have the screen.
This is when we arrived, and this is the picture of Gary Traeger, who helped me to come into this country through Judge Sidney Dworkin and Lo Viker. Okay, thank you.
So it's 10:53. We end at 11 o'clock. If you want to ask Erica a question, I'll ask you to unmute yourself and raise your hand, like in school, and you can ask her a question. If you feel that you want to continue this and have an in-depth discussion, like I suggested earlier, we can do this in 2 weeks and continue. So I'll let you all give me some sign that that's what you want to do. Okay. Questions? Marion, you have a question? Any? No question. Ernie, you have
Erica, I just wanted to thank you for doing this. This is terrific. It was down memory lane.
Thank you, Bernie. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bernie.
That's Bernie Jacobs, my cousin from Custom Hall.
I can vouch.
Ernie, hi, Ernie.
Hi.
Hi, Erica. I can vouch for everything that Erica had said. Her family, her mother and father, were very close friends to my mother and father. They were always together in Bridgeport. They spent a lot of time at the center, I believe, and at Havas Achim for many years. And there was a warm, friendly relationship between our family, Erica, and I'm proud to hear your story.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I still want to acknowledge Rabbi Stein and his friendship to my parents and Rodov Shalom, and they opened with open arms. They welcomed my parents, and those were the best years of their life. And Raz's mom, and exchanging shalach mones, how much my mother loved to bake the poppy seed and nut roll, and good memories.
Goldie, Goldie, you could unmute. Can you?
What do you think?
Am I okay? I don't have a question, but I wanted to say thank you to Erica for the presentation. And although I've heard it before, I found it most moving. And thank you. And you did a great job, Erica. Thank you.
Thank you, Goldie. Thank you for being a fellow friend. Almost 50 years.
Edith, did you have a question? Edith?
Erica?
Wait, Edith isn't unmuted. Edith, where'd you go?
I'm here. No, I don't have a question, but thank you for having the program.
Okay.
It's okay.
Where am I going here? Anybody else before we, try to figure out what we're going to do next? Jack?
I don't have a question, but Erica, all I can say is, wow, this was very emotional for us. I can imagine how it was for you. And I have to say how much I admire you. Every time you are always so friendly and loving and kind, and your life has been a struggle. And I appreciate you sharing this with us. It's been a terrific experience, and we admire you tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you. The only thing I want to add that I wanted to give back so much to this community, and I got involved at the Jewish resettlement, and I volunteered, and I was very active in Hadassah. And I want to acknowledge Leslie Levitz and Bishop Bell. She's the one who invited me to gift wrapping about 46 years ago. And with our children, we were packing candy to sell at the gift wrapping in the mall. And that was my connection to Israel. We never moved to Israel, but I love the Hadassah Hospital. I visited several times. And so I watch news every day. Every day I connect to Israel and love to hear the Hatikva and all the other Israeli songs and films. And same thing in this community. I volunteered in a public school, and we started off with the second generation group, and I will let you go. But we started the Holocaust observance and met a lot of other survivors, my friends also, second generation in 1980s at the Jewish Community Center.
So we're going to wrap this up with bookends of two Debbies, Debbie Bear and Debbie Bowles. And then in 2 weeks, we'll have a part 2 for open discussion. Debbie Bear first.
What I'd like to say, Erica, probably echoes a lot of what you've already heard. As a friend of long-standing through Hadassah and Rhoda Shalom, I commend you for everything that you have done in your life and continue to do. Your recall is marvelous. The fact that you have so many artifacts from Europe, from your days here, makes it much more impressive and meaningful because we can all visualize what you've gone through. The fact that you're not here for a pity party indicates the magnitude of your generosity and the fact that you really, really care. So thanks again for everything, and just continue doing what you do for a long, long time.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Very special friendship. Thank you. I treasure it. I want to show you, this was our matzah cover that my mother made by hand in Europe.
Oh, beautiful.
It's unbelievable. And then this was her hand designed towels as a dowry to her sisters that she received back after the war. And my mother's hand embroidered, I treasure these. This is something my grandmother made. It's probably 100 years old, hand embroidered. And all my little collars are on my dresses, my mother's white. She loved my white collar. So she would wash them all the time and iron them. Anyway, very special parents. I have good memories. Thank you all for joining. Very good to see you.
I'm going to ask Debbie Bowles as president of the synagogue.
Erica, all I can say is wow, and I just want to say that thank goodness for Zoom so that we could celebrate with you. I think that what we would have been doing is having a very big kiddush, either the Shabbat before or the Shabbat after. And unfortunately, we can't do that right now, but let's take a rain check. Because it's always a good idea to have a celebration when we finally can get back in the building. We're going to have a nice kiddush and we're going to celebrate, but I'm so glad that we could celebrate with you on Zoom today. And thank you for putting all the time and energy into planning this. I know it took a long time between you and Carol, all you did and the pictures, and it was really very special. So I thank you on behalf of the synagogue, and we celebrate with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You're very special. Yes.
You were terrific. You did a great job.
Thank you.
And if you can handle the energy one more time, in 2 weeks, I'd like to have an open discussion and follow up.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Love you. Thank you for joining. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you, friends and cousins. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Carol, Debbie.
Erika,
Yes.
I would just like to tell you, I know you for many, many, many years, but I never know your story. It was really something what you went through. And I'm so glad that I was sitting here and I could hear it. And I love you.
Thank you. I do too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. You'll have to come back in 2 weeks.
Okay, look at that. Thank you. Look, it's there.
Thank you so much, Carol.
Carol, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
It was my,
Thank you, Erica. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful.
you, Sheila. Thank you. Special. Thank you.
I'll
Thank
call
you.
you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Thank you.
I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.